Now, it seems in some way I'm a victim of geography. Nobody ever wants to send me free books to review because I don't live in the USA or England. Nobody wants to send anything to the Czech Republic. However, I haven't let that stop me, at least, in looking up some books that are soon to be published that I am excited to read and get my hands on when they are eventually published. So, hello everybody, welcome to and welcome back to my channel Book Time with Elvis with me, Mark, and I hope you're doing very well. I'm trying to get over a cold. You can probably hear it a bit in my voice, so apologies if this video dissolves into some kind of coughing fit, but I'm going to do my best. So as I said, there are several books being published over the course of this month and into next month that I'm particularly excited for their release. They are all non-fiction. So if that's not your cup of tea, you might not want to watch anymore, and I'll forgive you. But I do enjoy really good non-fiction, and I think there's just so much wonderful non-fiction coming out all the time that it makes for it's an exciting genre, I think, anyway. So let's move on. Naturally, of course, I don't have any copies of these books to show you, but I will put them up here, the covers, so you can see them, and I'll just kind of give you the blurb of them, and maybe you'll be interested too. I'll give you the release dates and everything as well. So the first book that I've tried to do it as best I can in publication order, but the first book that took my fancy, that's the earliest to be released, is called Red Scare, Blacklists, McCarthyism, and the Making of Modern America, and it's by a chap called, well, I'm assuming it's a guy, it might be a girl, but someone called Clay Risen. And it says, the blurb says, the film Oppenheimer has awakened interest in this vital period of American history. Now, for the first time in a generation, Red Scare presents a narrative history of the anti-communist witch hunt that gripped America in the decade following World War II. The cultural phenomenon, most often referred to as McCarthyism, was an outgrowth of the conflict between social conservatives and New Deal progressives, coupled with the terrifying onset of the Cold War. The defining moment in American history, unlike any that preceded it, was marked by an unprecedented degree of political hysteria. Drawing upon newly declassified documents, journalist Clay Risen recounts how politicians like Joseph McCarthy, with the help of an extended network of other government officials and organizations, systematically ruined thousands of lives in their dedicated pursuit of alleged communist conspiracies. Beginning with the origins of the era after World War I through to its conclusion in 1957, Risen brings to life the politics, patriotism, opportunism, courage, and delirium of those years through the lives and experience of a cast of towering historical figures, including President Eisenhower, Roy Cohn, Paul Robeson, Robert Oppenheimer, Helen Gahagan Douglas, Richard Nixon, and many more individuals known and unknown. I'm surprised Charlie Chaplin's not on the list, but yeah, well, there we have it. Red Scare takes us beyond the familiar story of McCarthyism and the Hollywood blacklists to a fuller understanding of what the country went through at a time of moral questioning and perceived threat from the left, and what we were capable of doing to each other as a result. An urgent, accessible, and important history, Red Scare reveals an all too familiar pattern of illiberal conspiracy mongering and political and cultural backlash that speaks directly to the antagonism and divisiveness of our contemporary moment. And that's Red Scare by Clay Risen, to be released on the 18th of March in 2025. Comes in at 480 pages, and it is published by Simon & Schuster. I think that sounds jolly interesting, don't you? So moving on, we come to a book that is actually released on the same day, on the 18th of March this year. And it's called Let Only Red Flowers Bloom, Identity and Belonging in Xi Jinping's China by Emily Feng. The rise of China and its great power competition with the US will be, just what I feared, will be one of the defining issues of our generation. But to understand modern China, one has to understand the people who live there and the way the Chinese state is trying to control them along lines of identity and free expression. In vivid cinematic detail, Let Only Red Flowers Bloom tells the stories of nearly 24 people who are pushing back. They include a Uyghur family separated as China detains hundreds of thousands of their fellow Uyghurs in camps, human rights lawyers fighting to defend civil liberties in the face of mammoth odds, a teacher from Inner Mongolia forced to make hard choices because of his support of his mother tongue, and a Hong Kong fugitive trying to find a new home and live in freedom. Reporting despite the personal risks, journalist Emily Feng reveals dramatic human stories of resistance and survival in a country that is increasingly closing itself off to the world. Feng illustrates what it's like to run against the grain in China and the myriad ways people are trying to survive with dignity. I think that sounds fascinating. I do like a good book on China, that's for sure. And that's Let Only the Red Flowers Bloom, Identity Belonging in Xi Jinping's China, written by Emily Feng, to be released on the 18th of March this year, so in, a few days from now, I suppose, and it's published by Crown. Yeah, gosh, it's exciting, isn't it? All these new things coming out. So, yeah, I'm going to definitely have to bulk up my TBR. Next up, I have an author who I've read before, and I really like her, and it's the author Hayley Rubenhold, and she wrote a fantastic book called The Five, which is about the lives of the 5 victims of Jack the Ripper, concentrating more on their lives and how they ended up being victims rather than concentrating on the murders themselves. And it's a really great read, and I recommend it. But this time round, she's gone a little bit further in time to 1910, and it's called Story of a Murder, The Wives and Mistress and Dr. Crippen. So on February 1st, 1910, a vivacious diamond-adorned music hall performer, Belle Elmore, suddenly vanished from her home, causing alarm among her friends, the entertainers of the Music Hall Ladies Guild. The demands for an investigation would lead to the unearthing of a gruesome secret and trigger a fevered international manhunt for Belle's husband, medical fraudster Dr. Hawley Harvey Crippen. Ethel Leneve, Crippen's typist and lover, who fled with Crippen in disguise, is always hidden in the shadows of this tale. Was she really just an innocent young girl in thrall to a powerful older man? And was there an equally sinister story behind the death of Crippen's first wife, Charlotte? Brimming with twists and featuring a carnival cast of eccentric entertainers, star lawyers, zealous detectives, medics, and liars, Story of a Murder offers an electrifying snapshot of Britain and America at the dawn of the modern era. Gosh, my goodness, makes me just want to run out and get it right now. So that was The Story of a Murder, The Wives, the Mistress, and Dr. Crippen by Hayley Rubenhold, published by Penguin, and it comes in at around 512 pages. So, yeah, I guess that's going to be great. As I said, The Five is well worth you checking out if you haven't read it. Fantastic book. And next up, we have The Determined Spy. So this could be a possibility for Dr. November, should it return later on this year. But The Determined Spy, The Turbulent Life and Times of CIA Pioneer Frank Wisner. So, Frank Wisner, I didn't tell you who it was by, did I? No, it's by Douglas Waller, should you need to know that, which would be helpful, wouldn't it? But anyway, moving on. Frank Wisner was one of the most powerful men in 1950s Washington, though few knew it. Reporting directly to senior U.S. officials, his work largely hidden from Congress and the public, Wisner masterminded some of the CIA's most daring and controversial operations in the early years of the Cold War, commanding thousands of clandestine agents around the world. Following an early career marked by exciting escapades as a key World War II spy under General William Wild Bill Donovan, Wisner quickly rose through the post-war intelligence ranks to lead a newly created top-secret unit tasked, under little oversight, with overseeing massive propaganda, economic warfare, sabotage, subversion, and guerrilla operations all over the world, including such daring initiatives as the CIA-backed coups in Iran and Guatemala. But simultaneously, Wisner faced a demon few at the time understood: bipolar disorder. When this debilitating disease resulted in his breakdown and transfer to a mental hospital, the repercussions were felt throughout Washington's highest levels of power. Waller's sensitive and exhaustively researched biography is the riveting story of both Frank Wisner as a national figure who inspired the cadre of future CIA secret warriors, and also an intimate and empathetic portrait of a man whose harrowing struggle with bipolar disorder makes his impressive accomplishments on the world stage even more remarkable. And it does sound a really remarkable story. So I'm definitely going to have to try and track that one down. And that is, once again, The Determined Spy, The Turbulent Life and Times of CIA Pioneer Frank Wisner by Douglas Waller, published again by Penguin, and comes in at 656 odd pages. So there we have it. Gosh, moving on. We've only got a couple left, so don't worry. Next up, because I was on a real Arctic and Antarctic exploration kick last year. So thankfully something has come out now, and it was pointed out to me only yesterday by the wonderful Ariane, one of I I say our subscribers because she does subscribe, of course, to a few booktube channels. But we read The Terror by Dan Simmons together. I think it was last year. Yeah, it was last year. And so she pointed out this new release, so I must thank her for that. And it's called Into the Ice, The Northwest Passage, The Polar Sun, and a 175-year-old Mystery by Mark Sinnott. So, only a few hundred vessels have ever transited the Northwest Passage, stretching through Canada's north from Maine to Alaska, and substantially fewer have completed the treacherous journey in a fiberglass-hulled boat like Polar Sun. But Mark Sinnott was determined to add his name to the list, and in doing so, also investigate a 175-year-old mystery, that of what happened to the legendary captain Sir John Franklin and his crew aboard the legendary HMS Erebus and HMS Terror. In this pulse-pounding travelogue, Mark Sinnott paints a vivid portrait of the modern-day Arctic like you've never seen before. With human-caused climate change warming the region twice as fast as any other part of our planet, Sinnott offers a fresh and exciting look at the journey itself, but also of the history of the land and the people who live there today. At the same time, he searches for the tomb of Franklin, who, along with his entire 128-man crew, perished after their ships became trapped in the ice near King William Island. Into the Ice, Mark and his crew must race against time and horrific storms to investigate legends, and in the end try to find the answer to why any of us would risk it all in the name of exploration. My goodness, that book sounds like it was written for me. And that, once again, that's Into the Ice, The Northwest Passage, The Polar Sun, and a 175-year-old mystery by Mark Sinnott, again published by Penguin. So they're on a roll for me, and it comes in at 432 pages. Now, penultimate release that I'm excited for is the second book, I believe, in a planned trilogy of non-fiction books. So it may be more. I might be wrong, but I certainly enjoyed the first one. And it's The Fate of the Day: The War for America, Fort Ticonderoga to Charleston, 1777 to 1780. And this is the second volume, as I say, of his landmark American Revolution trilogy. Yes, it is a trilogy. And Rick Atkinson is the author, and he's a Pulitzer Prize winning author as well. So how exciting. And the first book was called The British Are Coming, which I enjoyed immensely. So The Fate of the Day. The first 21 months of the American Revolution, which began at Lexington and ended at Princeton, was the story of a ragged group of militiamen and soldiers fighting to forge a new nation. By the winter of 1777, the exhausted Continental Army could claim only that it had barely escaped annihilation by the world's most formidable fighting force. 2 years into the war, George III is as determined as ever to bring his rebellious colonies to heel. Yes, those rebellious Americans, eh? But the king's task is now far more complicated. Fighting a determined enemy on the other side of the Atlantic has become ruinously expensive, and spies tell him that the French and Spanish are threatening to join forces with the Americans. Prize-winning historian Rick Atkinson provides a riveting narrative covering the middle years of the Revolution. Stationed in Paris, Benjamin Franklin woos the French. In Pennsylvania, George Washington pleads with Congress to deliver the money, men, and material he needs to continue the fight. In New York, General William Howe, the commander of the greatest army the British have ever sent overseas, plans a new campaign against the Americans, even as he is no longer certain that he can win this searing, bloody war. The months and years that follow bring epic battles at Brandywine, Saratoga, Monmouth, and Charleston, a winter of misery at Valley Forge, and yet more appeals for sacrifice by every American committed to the struggle for freedom. Timed to coincide with the 250th anniversary of the beginning of the Revolution, Atkinson's brilliant account of the lethal conflict between the Americans and the British offers not only deeply researched and spectacularly dramatic history, but also a new perspective on the demands that a democracy makes of its citizens. So if it's anything like the first book, it's going to be a rollicking, stomping read, and a corker at that, eh? Despite obviously the wrong side winning. So that's The Fate of the Day: The War for America, Fort Ticonderoga to Charleston, 1777 to 1780, by Rick Atkinson, published by Crown, comes in at a whopping 880 pages. It does come out on the 29th of April this year. So next up, and this one's a May release and one I'm very excited for, and it's Mark Twain, biography by Ron Chernow. So that would be great, eh? What a fantastic person to choose for his next project. Born in 1835, the man who had become America's first and most influential literary celebrity spent his childhood dreaming of piloting steamboats in the Mississippi. But when the Civil War interrupted his career on the river, the young Mark Twain went west and accepted a job at the local newspaper, writing dispatches that attracted attention for their brashness and humor. It wasn't long until the former steamboat pilot from Missouri, see what I did there? I can do these accents too. Missouri was recognized across the country for his literary brilliance. In this rich and nuanced portrait of Twain, Ron Chernow brings his powers to bear on a man who shamelessly sought fame and fortune and crafted his persona with meticulous care. After establishing himself as a journalist, satirist, and performer, and a family man, Twain went on to write The Adventures of Tom Sawyer and Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. He threw himself into the epicenter of American culture, emerging as the nation's most notable political pundit and the only white author of his generation to grapple so fully with the legacy of slavery. At the same time, his madcap business ventures eventually bankrupted him and led him and his family to 9 years of exile between London, France, Germany, and Italy. During this time, he lost his wife and 2 daughters, the last stage of his life marked by heartache, political crusades, and eccentric behavior that sometimes obscured darker forces at play. It's quite interesting it mentions the political aspect, because I know he got involved with the whole bringing to light the Congo scandal, which I read about recently in King Leopold's Ghost by Adam Hochschild. So, yeah, he definitely had his political causes. Drawing on Twain's bountiful archives, including thousands of letters and hundreds of unpublished manuscripts, wow, Chernow here captures the magnificent and often maddening life of one of the most original characters in literary history, reminding us of why Twain's writing continues to be read, debated, and quoted over 100 years after his passing. Yeah, I suppose maybe he did create that persona, considering, of course, Mark Twain not being his real name. So, yeah, I think that sounds great. I like Mark Twain. I don't know a huge amount about his life, but certainly now I will when this comes out, and I'll definitely have to get it. So once again, that's Mark Twain by Ron Chernow, also by Penguin, due to come out on the 13th of May this year, and it comes in at a barn-stomping huge number of 1,200 pages. So it's going to be great. Definitely can get lost in a biography of that size. It's going to be fantastic. So there we have it. These are the upcoming books, non-fiction books that I'm most excited about, at least of the ones I've come across. I'm sure there are many more. And if you like this video, then perhaps I'll be inspired to make others in a similar vein. So thank you ever so much for watching. Let me know, of course, in the comments below if you're excited for any of these, or if there are any others you know about that I might be interested in as well. Please do leave a comment. So thanks again. Do take care, everybody, and see you all soon. Bye-bye.